right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Why don't you come up sometime, see me?
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
The stuff that dreams are made of.
Hi, Wendy here. Before we start off our episode today, I want to remind everybody to check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Also, please leave a rating or comment on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. You can find us on social media by simply searching Silver Screen Time Machine, and please make sure you follow our podcast, Silver Screen Time Machine, anywhere you get your podcast. Thank you, and enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome again to Silver Screen Time Machine, Wendy's Classic Film Review. And today we have a guest on our show, a brand new guest, Ryan.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hello, Ryan. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you have some exciting things that you've just done recently.
Yeah. So my name's Ryan Russ, Pittsburgh native and filmmaker, local Pittsburgh filmmaker. I just had my local documentary called Hive screened at the Lindsay Theater in Sewickley, and also one at the Arizona International Film Festival.
Yeah, Hive is a really cool documentary. If you get the chance to see that, please do so. Very interesting and unique and very well done. So congratulations to you, and congratulations on your big win.
Thank you.
We just had Ross from the Lindsay Theater, so we have all sorts of whatever, I don't know, whatever the word is. Connections, all sorts of connections.
Yes.
So, but today we are getting in our time machine and we are going back to 1954 and we are going to talk about
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah, your pick, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Yes. And I might add, the first time we've ever done a Disney film on this podcast.
Got my Disney shirts on, decided to, I know you guys can't hear, you can see it, hear it at home, but I had to rep Disney today.
Yeah, not one, but two Disney shirts, actually.
Yes, this is my 50th anniversary for Walt Disney World. I guess button up and then a Walt Disney t-shirt.
Yes,
so.
And if you may actually get to see some clips of it if I ever put stuff on the Facebook page. And also, I want to remind everybody to please follow us on social media, check out our behind the scenes clips, and also please leave us a review on iTunes. We could really use some reviews. That's a really great way to get the podcast more noticed. So anybody that's on iTunes could leave us a good review, not a bad one. So let's start talking about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This film was nominated for 3 Oscars, Best Film Editing, and it also won Best Art Direction, Set Color, and Best Effects, Special Effects, which you could see why it might win for those.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty impressive for 1954. And interestingly, this is one of the first films to be filmed in Cinemascope, which is sort of a widescreen process. I'm going to talk more about that when we get to our cinematographer. A little background, this is adapted from a 1870 novel by Jules Verne. Verne was a French author, sometimes considered one of the early writers of science fiction, though it is debated if his work is truly science fiction. Many people think it's not. He was kind of considered a bit of a prophet in that his work spoke of technological advancements that only became commonplace in much later years. So it's kind of ahead of his time.
Yeah, for sure.
As a boy, he was influenced by a teacher whose husband was a naval captain who had disappeared 30 years prior. She would tell the kids that he was shipwrecked on a deserted island, just like Robinson Crusoe, and that sort of stuck in his mind and stayed with him. His father was a lawyer and expected him to take over the law firm practice, but Jules was determined to become a writer, which caused him to have a very strained relationship with his father for most of his life. He also suffered from health problems, including chronic stomach issues, and would have attacks of facial paralysis, probably stemming from an inflammation of the middle ear. They're not sure, though. In 1886, his nephew, Gaston, Gaston shot him twice, first missing him and then wounding him in the leg, causing a permanent limp. Poor Gaston would be sent to a mental asylum for the rest of his life. He is credited with inspiring the steampunk genre, a literary and social movement that glamorizes science fiction based on 19th century technology.
Wow, never knew that. Wow. Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
That villain Gaston.
Yeah.
Okay, screenplay. Okay, this guy's a very interesting fellow. Screenplay by Earl Fenton. Earl Fenton overcame extreme adversity as both of his legs were crippled from a childhood bout of polio. He refused to use a wheelchair, and he could get around quite well with crutches and a cane. If anybody would try to assist him, he would get very angry, and he would hit them with the cane if they tried to help him.
Yeah. Oh, my.
He was a fun guy.
Yeah.
He supposedly had some involvement with the notorious Profuma affair, participating in orgies involving John Profuma and Christine Keeler, as well as many others, including Douglas Fairbanks. Christine Keeler accused Fenton of being a spy for the FBI, and Fenton wound up shooting himself at age 62. And he was a frequent collaborator with director Richard Fleischer, our director on this film.
Wow, man, these backstories, I tell you, holy smokes.
Yeah, this guy was a little bit of a kind of a nutty guy.
Yeah.
But that anybody who doesn't know, I guess, I don't know how many people are familiar with this Profuma affair. This was a Secretary of State in Britain, a very high-ranking official in the Conservative Party. He had this affair with this Christine Keeler. She was some sort of a young model, a 19-year-old, I believe.
Oh.
And the Conservative Party kind of stood for what our Conservative Party stands for, family values, etc. So it kind of led to the ruination of the Conservative Party for the period of time, and it actually made them lose the next election to the other party, which I think is the Tory Party.
Oh, wow.
My British politics are not
You're
great.
all good, but yeah, never knew that.
So yes, but he was also involved in that because he was part of their crazy orgies. Anyhow, speaking of our director, Richard Fleischer.
Yeah, I was trying to see. I should have looked it up. How do you pronounce it myself?
It's so hard. All these names, even when they look simple, are so hard for me. Richard Fleischer. He won an Oscar for Best Documentary Features for a film called Designed for Death. His father, Max Fleischer, was an animator and an animated film producer. He would create such characters as Betty Boop, as well as first animated adaptations of Popeye and Superman. And his father was a big-time rival to Walt Disney, so Fleischer thought it odd that Disney would specifically ask for him to direct. As a matter of fact, he even said, "Do you know who I am? You know whose son I am?"
Yeah.
And Disney said, "No, we still want you." He would start out at RKO directing shorts and documentaries such as Designed for Death, which was co-written by Theodore Geisel, who was actually also known as Dr. Seuss.
Oh, wow. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow, man, these backstories.
Yeah, Dr. Seuss writing a documentary, Designed for Death.
Now I need to go look that up and find out what he did. Wow.
I got to go see that documentary.
Yes.
He would go on to make B movies for RKO and have a short partnership with Stanley Kramer before Disney asked him to direct this film, which helped him to become an A-list director thereafter. He's also known for the film Soylent Green, which is a very famous film. Our cinematographer is Franz Planer. Austrian cinematographer. He's a 5-time Oscar nominee. He started out as a portrait painter, but switched quickly to photography because he realized it was more lucrative. He was very successful in early German films, very influenced by German Expressionism. He left America prior to Hitler annexing Austria. Though he is known for his lighting techniques with black and white film, he quickly became proficient in shooting color. He was a frequent cinematographer for Audrey Hepburn films and was known for Breakfast at Tiffany's and Roman Holiday. Breakfast at Tiffany's is actually another podcast we did here.
Oh, yeah. My wife and I love that one. Yeah.
And it's beautiful color as well and beautifully shot. We talked about Franz in that particular one as well. We talked a lot about his cinematography in that because it was very beautifully done. He doesn't get to do much here because I think he's really limited with the Cinemascope. And actually, I'm going to talk about Cinemascope and I'll explain why this was limiting to him. But this, as I said, was one of the first films shot in Cinemascope, which was a new lens, which shot in widescreen. 20th Century Fox owned the Cinemascope lens, and at the time had only one available. So Disney had to rent the lens from 20th Century, and with only one lens available, this caused some delays in production. You can imagine being a film producer yourself. However, this film is often considered one of the best examples of Cinemascope production.
Yeah, I think it'd be amazing to actually go to a Cinemascope. I think the one in LA to actually see it reprojected and everything would be really, really something.
Yeah, so I mean, this poor cinematographer was pretty much saddled with one camera, one lens. That's what you have. So that it makes it very challenging.
Oh, yeah,
to shoot, and you're limited with your camera movement. You're limited with what you can do. You'll see in this film there's not a lot of close-ups because they really just don't have. They have only the one camera.
What it
does do is make your editor very important, I think. And the editor, he was nominated for this film, deservedly so. This editor's name is Elmo Williams. He is a 2-time Oscar nominee for this film, and he also edited High Noon, which he won the Oscar for.
Oh, wow.
He was orphaned at age 16. He would move to Los Angeles, where he was taken under the wing of renowned editor Merrill White. He would become an editor at RKO, and he was considered to be one of the best at RKO. He worked with Richard Fleischer on Design for Death, as well as several other films, and he would move on to directing, mostly as a second unit director later on in his life, and he lived to be 102 years old.
Wow, that's impressive. I think it just in general, all the editors back then, cutting on film is like, I can't even imagine that amount of film and
the actual reels, cutting and splicing, cutting and splicing.
I just can't even imagine the true craft. That's for sure.
You imagine how long that must have taken to edit something.
Oh gosh, yeah,
it's ridiculous. But yeah, so I think the editing well deserved this nomination because, like I said, with little they could do with the camera work, they really had to turn to editing to make it work. And you can see that as you watch this film. There's a lot of good editing in here. The score was by Paul Smith. He was nominated for 8 Academy Awards. He won 1 Oscar for his score in Pinocchio. As you may guess, he was a Disney guy. He pretty much worked with Disney most of his life. He was originally from Idaho. He was the band director at the College of Idaho for many years, and Idaho's former governor, Robert Smiley, referred to him as, quote, the father of music in the Boise Valley, as he taught all musical instruments. And as I said, he would go on to collaborate with Disney for a majority of his career. He is known for such Disney films as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, and Pollyanna.
On the way here, I was listening to the soundtrack on Spotify. It's I don't know. To me, it's like, I don't know, just you can play certain soundtracks, you can play out the movie in your head as you're listening to it, and this is definitely one you can. This
definitely has a sound to it that really seems to suit, the underwaterness of it.
Yes, 100%.
I thought the score was done very well. I mean, this Paul Smith, obviously I don't know much about him because we've never done anything Disney before, but I thought the score really worked well with the action on the screen, and it wasn't this overpowering score that was too much, but it just seemed right for all the action.
Absolutely.
I liked it. So I think we have to mention the art director, set design, because they won the Oscar. This is John Meehan, was the art director. He was a 3-time Oscar winner. The Heiress, Sunset Boulevard in this film. He had a background in architecture and primarily worked with Paramount and Columbia. The other fellow, Emil Curry, he was the set designer. He was a 6-time Oscar nominee with 2 wins, this movie and The Heiress as well. He worked frequently with Disney, and he was the first Mexican to win an Academy Award, and he lived to be 93 years old.
Wow, that's impressive.
And we can't do a Disney film without finishing off with producer Walt Disney.
Yes.
And my God, there's a lot of information about Walt Disney. We're going to try to keep it to a minimum here. But he was nominated, first of all, he was nominated for a record 59 Academy Awards, and he won 26. And that's also a record.
Yeah.
It's 22 competitive Oscars. Only the 22 competitive, the other ones were other kinds of Oscars. He started as a cartoonist as early as high school. He forged his birth certificate so he could join the Red Cross in World War I as an ambulance driver. He would work as an artist at Commercial Art Studio, where he met Ub Iwerks. They attempted to start their own business. Disney would work for a film ad company and became interested in animation, which he taught himself using a borrowed animation book and a camera. He would then open a new business, creating short cartoons, which they would sell to Newman's Theater, called Laugh-O-Grams. He would bring back Iwerks in this company, and they would start to experiment in producing cartoon films, which led to his move to Hollywood in 1923 at age 21. In 1928, Iwerks and Disney created Mickey Mouse. They said it was voiced by Disney until 1947.
Yeah, that's accurate.
I didn't even realize that. It is said that Disney used animals as his subjects because he had killed an owl as a boy and had extreme remorse over it and vowed to never kill another living animal.
All right.
Except in his films.
Yeah, that's true. Spoiler alert in there.
I think some animals die in this film.
Yes.
Creatures of some sort, yes. It also said Disney was painfully shy and insecure person, but he had high expectations of his staff and rarely praised them. It actually said if he said, "That'll do," that was considered high praise.
Yeah, he's one of those, yeah.
He had a very different public persona. You see him with all the birds and animals and and he made sure that children never saw him smoking, despite the fact that he was a chain smoker, which eventually caused his death of lung cancer.
Yeah.
That is all for the crew. Do you have any thoughts?
No, yeah. It was funny. As I have it on DVD. I bought it years before Disney Plus. And today I was like, oh, I'm going to pull it out. And I looked to the back and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many special features on this thing. I had no idea. So I put it in this morning. I started watching it, and everything that you were talking about was in the behind the scenes. And with the interview, his brother Roy, they were able to, I guess, capture a lot of interviews from him and tie him into everything. And one of the jokes, I think the set deck that mentioned, he was like, Walt's crazy ideas, and Roy, yeah, that's why he had no hair, because of how much money Walt wanted to spend on this movie and everything. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, a couple little trivia things before we get into the plot. Okay, first of all, you picked an actor I really love and an actor I really hate in this particular film. So I'm going to have some level of bias. But I'll start out. Kirk Douglas insisted on the beginning segment being put in there where he escorted two women and got in a fight to confirm his virile image on screen.
Okay.
Because that was not originally in the script.
Oh,
and
wow.
he could not do a film where he wasn't have multiple women flooding. Yes, yeah. And he had to, though there's other fighting in the script. I'm not sure why he had to have a fight in the beginning. Maybe he arranged all the fights. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had to have this very manly image. Filmed on location in the Bahamas and Jamaica, with some scenes being shot in the studios at Universal and 20th Century Fox. There's some of the ship scenes are a miniature ship. It's on a lake at 20th Century Fox. And the production cost was around $9 million, making it the most expensive production in Hollywood up to that time. But it was successful at the box office and was the third highest grossing film in 1954. And I thought it was cute. All the actors were required to carry herring in their pocket to reward Esmeralda the sea lion after her takes.
That's awesome.
And they said the crew the whole cast smelled like a fishery.
Oh gosh, I can't even imagine.
But she's so cute. I couldn't find any details on Esmeralda the sea lion. I did try to find out her background, but that was just not anywhere to be found.
No, the only thing in that behind the scenes when I was watching it is some of the scenes that she would just take off. They would say action, and then she would just book it out and go out the set doors and go into her water tank, and so I couldn't do anything about it.
Well, what was her background? What was her acting career?
I know.
What's her previous experience?
She should have got an Oscar.
She was great, actually. Yeah. She's better than Kirk Douglas. Whoops, did I say that? Anyhow. All right, let's start out. So the plot. As we go through the plot, we'll talk a little bit about the actors as they come across. So the very beginning is a book opening. I guess it's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Yeah. And it's opening to chapter 1, and it's talking about this monster on the loose. I like that sort of book start. I think it's a cool start to the film. And then you get a view of the ship. It pans across the water. They do a really nice pan across the water here on this.
They do, yes.
Yeah. And then you see this monster / sub. You don't know what it is because they're trying to make you think it's a monster. It's just this weird green glowing thing that's sort of coming through the water. It almost looks like it could be a whale with the green glowing eyes. But then the sub crashes into this ship and this huge explosion. So that's what you see in the very beginning. And then you kind of cut to this group of men talking. This guy's trying to recruit sailors saying, hey, there's no monster. Don't worry, everybody. It's perfectly fine. Yes, ships are being sunk at a rapid rate, but just come on and get on a ship. No problem. But of course, the men are afraid of the sea monster. They don't want to sign up. And then you see Ned. Here comes Ned Land. This is Kirk Douglas with his two women. He's so sort of virile. And he starts causing trouble. He starts causing a fight. And since we're speaking of Kirk Douglas, we might as well talk about Kirk Douglas. Okay, Kirk Douglas playing Ned Land. He was nominated for 3 Oscars. He did not win. He did win an honorary Oscar. He was born, okay, this is going to be fun to try to say. He was born Isur Danielevich Dembski.
Wow.
Isur Danielevich Dembski. His parents were immigrants from modern-day Belarus. His family was extremely impoverished. They were very, very poor, like to the point where they didn't have food. Oh, wow. His father was an alcoholic, and he was physically abusive. But Kirk did very well in school, and he was an excellent athlete. He was very interested in acting. He would serve as communications officer in the Navy in World War II. When he returned from the Navy, he was able to get a role in his first film, The Strange Love of Martha Ivers, which would start him on his way to a very successful Hollywood career. He was a big box office star in the 1950s, and in 1960, he would play the lead in Spartacus, which is often considered his most famous role. He was generally not easy to get along with and frequently disliked by many of his co-stars on his films. There's also allegations that he raped Natalie Wood when she was 16 years old. He is known for many films, including Lust for Life, Out of the Past, and Paths of Glory, and he lived to be 103. I think we know pretty familiar with Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, I think when you said that he's not easy to work with. And many times in that behind the scenes, they were like, yeah, he might not be easiest to work. He's like, and he was like, I don't think I'm not easy, to work with.
No, I've read that from many different co-stars of his on many different movies. They did not like him. Yeah. And I don't like him. But...
Well, for today, we do like him.
Yes, but he is in this film, and okay. Anyhow, so then this huge fight breaks out, right? And then I was a little confused by this part. Maybe you can shed some light. So these policemen come and they sort of drag Ned away. Like, what are they doing? Are they taking him to jail? Is he being shanghaied? Are the MPs taking him back to the ship?
Yeah, that really didn't tie into of the town, the Western town, or it wasn't part of Western town. It was, I don't know what it was, Boston or where it was set in. But I was like, they're hauling him off because he did the fight, I guess.
Is it the fight? I wasn't sure why they were hauling him off.
Because he got in there and then he just so happens to get knocked out into the mud or whatever, and then these guys just randomly pick him up out of everybody.
And took him away. And so I was like, well, who are these people? I guess they were policemen.
Yeah, we'll go with policemen.
Yeah, so anyhow, that happens and he's gone. And then the next thing you see is the professor and his apprentice. They come up to the shipyard and they're trying to get on a ship, but they find out, of course, that their ship is canceled because nobody wants to be a crew of a ship because they don't want to be killed by a monster. I noticed they did a lot of film dissolves in the editing from scene to scene. And then a man comes in from the government. He offers to get them to the Orient, but he says, in order to do that, you will have to spend 6 months trying to help us look for this monster in the seas. And they agree. The professor, I should say, is played by Professor Aronnax, was played by Paul Lucas. Paul Lucas was a Hungarian actor. He won a Best Actor Oscar for Watch on the Rhine, which is a Bette Davis movie. He had a very successful early stage career in Hungary and Germany. He would move to the U.S. in the late 1920s and was able to get work in many U.S. films throughout the 1930s, despite having a very strong accent, which was kind of rare.
Yeah.
His breakout role was Watch on the Rhine, where he starred with Bette Davis. He would continue to work in film until the 1960s. He was a very avid and very serious tennis player. He once chastised some bystanders for talking while he was playing, as it was distracting him from the game.
Wow. I don't know that from watching it and seeing, wow.
And it was said, actually they said on this particular set, everybody was pretty friendly, but he was very standoffish with the rest of the cast while filming the movie.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Get their type, the actor types. Kirk got his, he got his,
Yeah. I didn't read anything bad about Kirk in this particular movie, just that he was kind of standoffish.
Yeah.
And his apprentice, Peter Lorre, who doesn't love Peter Lorre? He plays this, I think this fellow's name is Conseil. It's kind of an odd name. I keep calling him the apprentice throughout because I don't like to say Conseil. Peter Lorre was born Laszlo Lowenstein in Austria in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And he spoke Hungarian and German. His mother died when he was 4 years old and his father remarried. Unfortunately, Peter never got along with his stepmother. He began acting on stage in Vienna at age 17. He would begin working in early German films and would rise to fame in the Fritz Lang drama M. He had to flee Germany when the Nazis came to power and wound up in England, where he was cast in the Alfred Hitchcock film The Man Who Knew Too Much. Despite being barely able to speak English, they said he had to learn his lines phonetically.
Oh, wow.
Lorre would move on to America, but had little success at first, probably because he had a really strong accent. But his breakout role would come with In the Maltese Falcon. He would be graylisted for his friendships with supposed communists and struggled to find work in the late 1940s, but would find work in the 1950s playing a series of creepy characters and being in some low-budget horror films. Yeah. Sadly, Peter Lorre suffered from gallbladder issues and would be prescribed morphine, which would cause him to become addicted to morphine. He would eventually overcome the addiction, but then he would gain quite a lot of weight and had a very difficult time getting roles. He is known for The Maltese Falcon, Casablanca, and Arsenic and Old Lace. I really like Peter Lorre.
No, he's great.
I really like him in this particular film as well.
Oh, yeah.
He does a great job. I never see Peter Lorre where I don't think he does a great job, actually. I really think he's a good actor. Okay, so that's about all the people we've seen so far. Yeah. And then you see, again, you're going to see these shots of the ship. Most of these faraway shots of the ship are actually miniatures on the lake at 20th Century Fox.
Yeah.
But I must say, I've seen films with ship miniatures that are driving around thing that look very fake. I think it looks very realistic.
I think with Disney's direction, how they did things, I think making sure they're detailed enough and that and the map paintings and all that could really bring out that realism, especially for back in the day. But it still holds up today for an older movie. You're looking at it, it's like, that feels real.
I feel like this film could almost look like a modern day film. This film is very well done for 1954. I mean, this looks like something that was done in the 60s. That's how totally good this film is. And I've seen film done in the 60s that are not done as well as this. But yeah, really, really nice job. You cannot tell that's a miniature. It doesn't, and even if you're really looking, it just looks like a ship. Far away shot of a ship.
Looks better than some of the CGI today, honestly. Yeah. Because I think sometimes miniatures look 100% more real than something you can create in the computer.
Yeah. And he had some of the best special effects people. But anyhow, so we wind up seeing the professor and the apprentice. Now they're on the ship. And also Ned is randomly there as well. So I guess he got out of wherever he was and wound up on the ship. And now they're searching the seas for the monster. And then I thought it was interesting. There's an early scene where there's a little bit of a storm. There's a lot of storms in this particular film. This film is littered with storms. But there's an early storm, and Ned and Peter Lorre are on the deck together. Peter Lorre is quite sick, Conseil or whatever his name is. Yeah. And Ned tries to give him a banana when he's seasick. Like, but I think it's like a little foreshadowing of a potential friendship. They get paired up a lot in this film, and I think it's sort of a foreshadowing that they're going to form an alliance. And then I thought it was really interesting. You see these scenes of dolphins and whales and stuff. Is that stock footage? Did they film that? And because I know it was filmed in Jamaica and the Bahamas, did they go out at some point and get shots of creatures?
Did they luck out, or did they go out and say, hey, we need to try to find dolphins and But I think that's nice that they went and got real dolphins and to add in it to make that atmosphere that they're out in the open ocean.
Well, could they have stock footage when they were working with Cinemascope?
Yeah, I don't think you
widescreen wouldn't it have to match?
You would have to match if you. I think like it's different now how you can splice IMAX and 35 mil together, but back then you probably had to have.
Yeah, so I was wondering. See, I don't know. So
maybe when they were like in the Bahamas, Jamaica, maybe they went out and
on the boat and just took footage.
Took footage.
Anyhow, it's really nice. But then the captain's going to summon everybody to the war room, and he says, hey, basically, we don't think there's a monster. We're abandoning the search. And he tells the professor, hey, we'll take you to Saigon like we promised. But the professor is he's sorely disappointed. And now Ned is going to sing his Whale of a Tale song with his guitar. Said he was taught the guitar by the production designer, Harper Goff. He taught him the guitar, and he learned to play it very well, they said. In that little thing he does where he flips the guitar, that was Kirk Douglas's own thing that he put in. And another thing, that's Kirk Douglas actually singing. Nobody's dubbing him.
I think he sounds great in that. I honestly, it's a very catchy tune.
It's very catchy. It was a big hit at the time.
I'm not sure did they write that or did they pull that from somewhere else, but very catchy.
Yeah, no, I imagine they wrote it. I think Disney was pretty big about writing their original songs, but that actually became a hit, like a popular hit as well. But as they're like, oh, okay, we're going to go to Saigon, this is all over, then all of a sudden they see the ship explode in the distance, and they're like, oh, we better go help that ship. And it sinks almost immediately by the time they get there. And the professor and the crew think the monster struck the ship. And then all of a sudden they look over and they see the monster over there in the distance. And they're like, oh, there's the monster. And they start firing cannons at it. And then this is a lot of good cross-cutting in this scene, in my opinion. You see the ship, the sailors, the sub. You get some close-ups here of the different sailors, like Ned, the professor, the captain, all these different cross-cutting in here. And then the sub starts to try to run away from them. And the captain says, fire that on that sub anyway. And they said, well, it's leaving. And he's like, I don't care. Still fire on it. And so they do. And then as soon as that happened, the sub turns around and comes through them. And they're at this point still thinking it's a monster. They don't know it's a sub. And Ned's even out in the boat ready to harpoon. He thinks he's going to harpoon this sub. And here it comes. And then all of a sudden it rams the boat and everybody falls off. Ned falls out of his boat. And then the professor falls overboard and Conseil.
He's like, Professor.
Professor, I'll come get you. Can we do a Peter Lorre impression? Professor. I can't do him. I can't do it. Professor. I can't do it.
His voice is so unique how he says
it's hard to imitate it. Stay there, Professor. I can't do it. Anyhow, so he jumps overboard and then the ship is sank. And then the next thing you see is the professor and Conseil. They're on the mast holding on and they do a little fade to black here. But then again, they come back to them and they're on the mast again. You assume that a period of time has elapsed. And they see the sub in the distance. Now it's actually sort of out of the water. It's not as much in the water as before. So they're like, what is that thing? And the professor's like, I don't care. Let's just get on it. And the professor gets and he realizes it's a sub and he gets all excited. Oh, this is technologically advanced stuff. And they're calling inside, ahoy, ahoy. And nobody's answering. So, of course, they figure what we'll do is we'll just go inside since, you know, might as well go check the whole thing
Why
out.
not?
The professor is in some sort of the spellbound state. He can't get enough of this sub. He's so excited. So he's down there looking at everything, and poor Conse's like, I think we should get out of here. And the professor's like, no, we have to, you know.
You gotta science.
The whole time, the whole time in this film, the professor is in pursuit of science, and Conce is in pursuit of his own survival.
Yeah, he wants to live through this. Yeah.
So then they hear more ahoy, ahoy, and they're like, oh, somebody's outside. So Conce goes up and sees, and who's there but Ned, and he's in his longboat, but the longboat's upside down, and he brings him aboard, and they both agree that they think they should leave, and they flip the lifeboat over so they can all get in.
Makes sense.
And then Peter Lorre says, I've got to go get the professor. So he runs down to try to get him. And again, there's a lot of cross-cutting, but not much camera movement, probably because of the one lens.
Yeah.
But the professor he can't leave because he's now obsessed with this scene about this underwater burial scene. He's staring out this portal at it. He's fascinated. Poor Conce is like, let's go. And he cannot get him to leave.
Get on his professor.
Please, let us go. And all he wants to do is stare at this burial scene. And then they're right at this big, huge window. So, of course, the divers turn around and see them standing at the window.
You're just in like a daze. Like,
he's like in a daze.
Yeah.
He's, like I said, spellbound.
Yes.
The whole time. But the underwater scenes are really quite phenomenal.
They are, especially for the time, 1954, you know how many years before that they shot it, but
Beautiful. And the music they use in the underwater scenes is really good as well. And their little diving costumes are very interesting.
Yes,
they
are.
They look like spacesuits really more.
They
look like spacesuits. So the divers see the professor at the window. So, of course, they start coming back to the boat.
Yeah, of course.
And then now, all of a sudden, the professor's like, well, maybe we should escape. So they're all they all get on the boat, but the divers come up and start attacking the boat. And Ned's trying to fight, Ned's single-handedly fighting them all off. You know how virile Kirk Douglas is.
Yeah, I like how they did pop up, though, on the ship. They all just shoot up and start grabbing, and they're on the lifeboat. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so then it shows the divers coming up into the sub, right?
Yep.
The one guy comes in, they take off the helmet, and then you see it's James Mason.
Yes.
You don't know at this point who he is, but it's James Mason. You can tell he's somewhat in command because he starts giving all these orders. He tells them, search the boat. And then you're cross-cutting back and forth again to Ned. He's still trying to fight off these men, but they get overpowered and they're taken inside. And then I love this shot of James Mason when he's coming up the stairs. It's so very dramatic portion where he comes up the stairs and is very quiet. Right. There's no music at all. Just here comes James Mason.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And he asks, did you come from the ship that just attacked us? And the professor tries to explain, hey, we thought that was a monster. We didn't know you were a craft. We thought it was a monster. And he very politely introduces all the guys to, we haven't heard who this is, but James Mason. And all of a sudden, when he mentions his name, James Mason's very interested. He seems to like this guy. He seems to respect his work. Speaking of James Mason, by the way, I'm going to fangirl a little bit because I love James Mason so much. I think he is so phenomenal, especially in this role. I think he is absolutely amazing in this role. Yeah. But he was nominated for 3 Oscars, and he never won. So wrong.
Dang it.
Yeah, terrible, because he's one of the greatest actors ever. James Mason was born in England, came from a wealthy family, and went to school to become an architect. He started doing some stock theater in his spare time for fun, and soon became more interested in acting than architecture. He would then go on to join the Old Vic Theatre, which is the most prestigious acting company in all of England at the time. That was Sir Laurence Olivier's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where he was at as well. He would get to work in films in early Britain quickie quota films. He was a conscientious objector to World War II and refused to serve, which caused a rift with his family. He would continue in British films, finally getting more notice when he starred in Carol Reed's film noir, The Odd Man Out, which we also have a podcast of that, The Odd Man Out. Check that out. He would make his way to Hollywood and have a lot of success in the 1950s and 1960s. He would continue to act into the 1980s. He was also quite fond of cats and authored and illustrated a book called The Cats in Our Lives. He was known for North by Northwest, Lolita, A Star is Born, and The Verdict. And I absolutely love him. And his voice.
Yes.
He has the best voice.
Especially for this role, too.
Yes,
like,
so deep and commanding. And
no one could if they attempt. I know that they've tried. I think it's a series, but it's like no one can replace, especially everybody in this role. But yeah, especially his for sure.
Yeah, they actually did a spoof of this on Saturday Night Live.
Really?
And Kelsey Grammer plays.
Oh my gosh.
James Mason, and whoever the guy is that does Kirk Douglas does him so well. It sounds just like Kirk Douglas. And the guy that does Rod Snyder does Peter.
Yes.
Peter Lorre is perfect. He sounds exactly like Peter Lorre. It's really quite funny. Anyhow, as we digress. Yeah. All right, now I'm forgetting where we are. Okay. Okay. So James Mason, he's going to sentence. He doesn't like Land and Conseil, and he says, "You're going to go rock the plank. You're sentenced to death." And the professor, of course, is protesting. And he says this sort of thing a lot. He makes it clear that he does not obey the laws of the civilized world. He considers where he is completely different than the rest of the world. He talks about that quite a lot. And there's this little bit where it's Nemo or James Mason versus the professor. There's some rare close-ups here with cross-cutting between the two, like they're having almost a verbal battle. Professor says he should be with the others. And Nemo says, well, I'm sorry, you've made that choice. Take him with the others.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, whatever, that's fine.
See ya, buddy.
Yep.
Which I think surprised the professor. I think the professor was going to say, oh, well, you have to stay at all costs, so we'll bring the others back. Yeah. But he's quite surprised. And meanwhile, James Mason says they're watching as they're sinking into the sea while they're trying to hold on to the mast because they're taking the sub underwater. And again, there's no music here, just the sea sounds going under the sea. And then as they finally get submerged under the sea, suddenly Nemo tells, go get those guys. And as they come up, you only see Ned. He's the only one clinging to that mast with this determined look like, I will not, I'm not going to. Yeah, he's just so. Okay, and then you see, now we get our first glimpse of the wonderful Esmeralda. She's with James Mason. He's in his quarter at his table, and he invites Ned, Conseil, and the professors in. And now he tells them that he's Captain Nemo, so now we can refer to him as Captain Nemo. And then he tells them not to escape, which, of course, Ned starts arguing with him. Like, yeah, I'm going to escape, dude. Yeah. They're complimenting the food.
Oh, love that scene. So funny.
They're eating the food. They're complimenting the food. Nemo tells Ned, oh, hey, there's a fork right there. And he's like, I can't be bothered with utensils. He's eating with this knife.
That old school style.
And then the professor says, oh, where did this food come from? And then Nemo starts telling them what they're eating. It's everything from the sea. And then all of a sudden Ned and Conseil are suddenly not that hungry anymore.
There's some weird stuff he was mentioning. Was
like octopus fetus or something.
Yeah, something. They're just like, Kirk Douglas's reactions were priceless.
Yeah, but the professor continues to eat and compliment the food. And then he tells them, well, you can get your own food. We're going to be going on a hunting expedition. And he tells Ned and Conseil to go prepare. And then the professor stays with Nemo. The professor hangs out. Nemo's always hanging out with the professor. Yeah. That's his new bestie. Basically, that's his new BFF.
I think because it's split, like him and Nemo went together. The
Conseil
Ned.
So there's a little bit of camera movement I noticed in the scene. And he tells the professor that he was spared because he's loyal to his friends and he thinks that trait might be coming useful. And that's his excuse. I think he just really wanted to have a buddy.
Yeah, 100%.
He didn't want the professor to go. He's like, I have a friend.
So to talk to.
And Ned and Conseil put on their diver suits. And again, I said they're paired up quite a lot. And then the professor and Nemo also they all go out diving. They're all in the water. And then I wrote underwater music, very interesting. It seems like a lot of flutes and reeds. Yeah. The noise when they drop from the hatch.
Yes.
It's really funny. It's sort of a happy, peaceful, dreamlike music.
Yeah, like they do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. The music is really works really well with the action.
Each time they play that, every time coming down.
When they come out of the thing, it's great. But you get a lot of shots here again of fishes, stingrays, different animals, and you see the divers collecting the creatures for food. You see, I guess they're supposed to be lobsters and fish, but then they're carrying little turtles. Yeah, I hate when they carry the turtles. I
don't think that would fly nowadays. No. They were like holding on to that one big turtle.
Let the turtles alone. You don't need to eat the turtles. But Ned has spotted a sunken ship. He's kind of showing it to Conseil, and they go over to investigate it, and they find this. They just conveniently find this chest, and they open it up, and it's full of treasure. Of course, that's stereotype. And they're like, "Ooh, let's take this," and they start to try to carry the chest. But then all of a sudden, the shark comes out of nowhere and starts harassing them. It says that the shark wasn't scripted in, that the shark was just literally around, and they decided the shark just started coming around.
And they just tied it in.
And they just put it in,
Huh. I saw they were showing when they had a camera underneath water because they did like the POV of the shark.
Oh, yeah.
And when he went towards one of the stunt divers. I guess he clipped his suit and actually opened it up.
Oh, yeah.
And water started filling in. They had to hurry up and get him up and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. See, I don't know. It just said something about a nursery shark showing up and they didn't expect it. So I don't know.
Production value
I don't know
right
if it was
there.
there or somewhere else. But Nemo sees the shark and he shoots it. And then the men come and they take Ned and Conseil away and their treasure gets left behind. And of course, when they're back in the boat, Ned's throwing a big fit about, oh, you left the treasure, blah, 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 blah. And Nemo's like, the real treasure around here is food, basically. He's like, all you need is food. You don't need this treasure. And then he says, I've had a whole room of this stuff. And he opens this door full of treasure. He's like, I use this as ballast, which I was like, what is ballast? So I looked it up. It's a dense material used to add weight to a ship.
Oh, okay.
So he's using it to add weight to the ship, basically, which makes it sense when Ned says things like, I can lighten the ship up a little bit for you.
So you need to throw out some of the treasure.
He wants to take the treasure, right? And he's really upset that there's all this treasure that they're not using. They're just using as ballast. And Nemo starts becoming impatient and is like, I don't need to put up with you. I can get rid of you.
Yeah.
You don't have to be annoying me. And then the professor winds up sending for Ned and he basically says, hey, cool it. You're going to get us all killed. Why don't you calm down? Yeah. And Ned, this is when Ned and Con say, he's like, hey, he wants to look for the treasure too. It's not just me. And he's like ratting him out. And Con is trying to like, oh, no, I was only looking for scientific things.
Oh, yeah. Calm back.
He's like pushing him and starting to fight with him. But Ned really wants to leave. He wants to steal the treasure and escape. And the professor says, look, chill out. Hold on. I'm going to get us out of here. Let me do it my way and we'll get out of here. I'll make friends with the captain. He already, we're already BFFs and we'll get out of here. And Ned's like, well, Nemo's insane. He's cracked. Yeah. And he's like, dealing with a mad dog, you're trying to feed him sugar. He's like, while you're doing that, I'll find a way to muzzle him, which there's a couple of pretty good lines in this. Particular film. So
Snap, yeah.
That Earl Fenton.
Yeah. Yes.
Good old Earl.
Oh, good old Earl.
In the middle of his orgies, he was putting down some good lines.
Yes, he's putting those down wherever he could.
But now the professor is becoming scientifically obsessed to the point of getting blinders on. Yeah. He can't even see anything. Everything is about the scientific discovery. He doesn't care about anything else. And then you should get a shot. There's a pipe organ, by the way, in this. And you get this shot of Nemo playing Toccata and Fugue on the organ. And I said, is Toccata and Fugue the only song that's allowed to be played in an organ in a film? Because seriously.
Is that really a constant thing throughout?
I mean, does anytime I've seen an organ played in a film, they are always playing Toccata and Fugue.
That's true.
Is there some rule? Like we have to, is that the only organ piece of music?
Hollywood rule right there.
But Toccata and Fugue is a very ominous piece, so it does fit in well for this. And the professor's writing in his diary, this is where you're going to get a lot of cross-cutting again. There's a nice pan down from the organ to Nemo in the mirror to then his hands playing and then a full shot of him. Yeah. That was a really nice job there.
Very nice
like
setup.
I said, there's so little camera work here that so little camera movement that when you see some, you're like, oh, very nice.
But yeah, I think when you have a lot to play in the scene, that tells it. You're not thinking of camera movement, you're visually seeing what's happening. Yeah.
And I don't think that other people pay as much attention.
No, you just watch movies.
Yeah, you're just watching movies. You're like, oh, that's a nice camera pan. It's totally different from me. That's what I'm looking for. Yes. Anyhow, Ned has made a guitar out of a turtle shell, and the professor and his assistant are studying stuff, and the professor says to Conseil, hey, you go watch Ned. Keep an eye on him. Keep him out of trouble. So he's following Ned around the thing. Ned's going to the treasure room. He's trying to hide the treasure in his guitar shell. And then all of a sudden, Esmeralda runs up and she's like, whoa, 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 barking at him. I thought maybe she was warning him because right away, then the first mate is saying something. He hears the first mate. And he starts shutting the treasure room, playing his guitar, pretending he's playing with Esmeralda. But the first mate is eyeing him very suspiciously. Yeah. First mate doesn't. He's on to him.
Oh, yeah.
Then Nemo is going to show the professor the workings of the ship. And he tells Nemo a secret like this could revolutionize the world. And Nemo says, or destroy it. He talks about how peaceful it is under the sea. And there's a nice zoom in on Captain Nemo on this monologue about how he is free under the water and how people on Earth should not control subs and ruin underwater like they have ruined the Earth. He has a lot of great monologues in this, James Mason.
Yes.
And he does them really beautifully. He really beautifully plays this character that is obviously loony but doesn't know he is.
No.
And thinks he is being very rational and normal.
Yeah. And mysterious part of it, too.
Yeah.
I really like,
Yeah, I just think it would be rather hard to convey insaneness in the sane way.
Yeah. And it's an experience that he has to be able to bring that into it. But yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously now everyone loves Ned, but his character though, as Captain Nemo, is definitely top in this.
Yeah, I think he's the best thing about this film. But then again, I'm also partial to James Mason. But I mean, I really do. So then Nemo and the professor are going to go ashore. And then this is when Nemo shows him the prison camp / slave camp, whatever the heck this is. Yeah. And they show the men beating these slaves and prisoners very far away, though. So, I mean, this is rated G, I think. So they show the beating you have to really look carefully to see the whipping and stuff. Yeah. And then Nemo admits he used to be a prisoner and a slave. And he says that they're loading materials to create weapons for the warships to destroy. And this is why he is always trying to, he doesn't say, but this is kind of why he's always destroying the warships. And he tells the professor that he escaped and that the other men on the ship they're all escaped prisoners. And what they had done is they wound up stealing a ship and they went to a place called Volcana and built the Nautilus somehow. In this place called Volcana. But it's very unclear of exactly how they managed to steal the ship and then how they managed to get all the things they needed to build this really remarkable marvel. The
professor is in awe still of you built something. Yeah, so it's kind of, I guess, that creative side, imagination.
This is sort of like, it gets a little bit into a fantasy type thing here. It's not very realistic, but you can't expect realism. It's a Disney film.
No.
So then all of a sudden they spot a ship. They spot one of these warships, and the Nemo orders Professor to go to his quarters. Okay, this is a really good part too, where he goes to the organ and he's playing the Toccata and Fugue.
Yes.
After he orders that the ship should be rammed and sunk, and his face in the scene. What is it? Angry and despairing both? Like just this combination of emotions. It's indescribable, and I don't even know how you would make your face look like that. But I mean, it's phenomenal.
He carries all that weight of everything that's happening in that moment, and that's just being a really good actor. That's for sure. Yeah,
it's a phenomenal scene, and again, Ned is with Conseil when they're back in their. He's not with the professor. So Nemo's he goes to the wheel, he starts giving instructions, and it says there's a nice shot of the Nautilus going towards the ship, and they have a nice little red moon in the background. I guess maybe that was a matted in painting behind, I would guess. It looks really nice. So he gives the orders to collide, and then it has a close-up on his face as they come to a ship, and then they have the close-up on his eyes, which I think is the biggest close-up they have in the whole film.
I don't see anything else that would be as close as the eyes, So
they really wanted to get his expression there. The ship explodes, and then the three guys are now in the room, and they're looking out the window. They see the sunken ship, and there's an interesting little pan at the window there, too, that I like. But as the ship is exploding or whatever, something happens to the Nautilus, and everybody's getting thrown around, and Ned and Conseil are really upset about the sinking of the ship, and Nemo tells them, go to your quarters, and they do. And then the professor's still there. He starts to get angry. He calls Nemo a murderer and a hypocrite, but then Nemo is going to try to get the professor on his side again, because he claims that the warships will murder far more, and that in the long run he's kind of saving people by killing these people. And then he talks about how they tortured his wife and young son to death to try to get the secret of the Nautilus. And you're like, well, when did this happen? But
we're not.
I'm just like, what? When?
We're not going that far.
What point did this happen? But whatever. And then he says, the power of hate can fill the heart as surely as love can. And like I said, there's all these really great little lines that he says. And the professor, he's so mad at him in the beginning. And then when he hears the story, suddenly, he's being very manipulated by Nemo.
Oh, yeah.
He's very easy to manipulate. But then you cut to Conseil. He's reading the professor's journal. And then the professor comes in. He's like, oh, this stuff fell down. And he's trying. But then he tells the professor, look, things are going too far. This has to stop. And now the professor starts sticking up for, you don't understand him. How can you judge him? This and that. He has this great discovery and great secret. And that's all he cares about. And then I really like the scene where Conseil calls him captain. And he said, what did you call me? And he says, well, you're acting just like the captain. You're just like him now. And then he goes to Ned and he says, hey, I want to get out of here. I want to escape. He says, the professor is totally taken in by the captain. It's just all he cares.
Hopeless.
Yeah, and he asked Ned, does he have a plan? And Ned says, well, I do, but we don't know how to work the ship. So then the next thing they decide to do is try to look for charts and figure out how to work the ship. Ned always rubs his hair the one way, and then as soon as he rubs his hair that way, he immediately puts it back. And it's just a thing that happens 2 or 3 times in the film, it just always... But they're doing these repairs on the ship, and so the captain's off overlooking the repairs, and while he's doing that, Ned's trying to find the ship charts. Then they wind up getting almost caught by the first mate, so they run away and they wind up in Nemo's cabin. And then he sees this big map, this big chart, and they're trying to figure out where they are and how they're getting there and whatnot. And then Esmeralda comes in. She's like, "Woo, woo, woo," and they're like, be quiet. So they start feeding her these cigars, these seaweed cigars. Yes. They keep feeding their seaweed cigars to make her quiet, and she's just eating them up. And then the captain comes into the room and they escape, and they leave the empty cigar box, so it's just sitting there with Esmeralda, and the captain's like, what are you doing, Esmeralda? Yeah. And you don't know, does he think Esmeralda ate all the cigars? She got it herself, or does he know that somebody's been in his room?
Yeah, it's kind of like,
I'm not sure.
The debate.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. I was like, what's happening here? But then Ned's writing all these messages that he's putting in these bottles. And these bottles contain a lot of things that I don't know what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah.
Flablina, oculina.
Yeah, I don't...
Some sort of weird specimens of fish that are being preserved in alcohol, I think. Something like that.
It's the science.
But Conseil is really upset because he's throwing away these are so precious and valuable. And then he's drinking the alcohol that these things are being preserved in. Ned is. And then he drinks one of the Flabina, Oculina things. Yeah. I don't know. It's a very funny part. You have to watch it.
Yes,
it's much more funny if you watch
funny
it.
Bits.
But then there's alarm ringing, and the captain runs to the bridge, and something's wrong with the steering wheel, and the ship gets caught on a reef. And Nemo asks the professor if he wants to go ashore at this point, and he declines. He says something like, "Last time we went ashore, that was prelude to a murder." And then Ned says to Conseil, "Oh, this island has all these native women's hungry for affection." He's telling him all this stuff. And Conseil's like, "Well, it's too bad the professor doesn't want to go, because normally he'd like to collect specimens." Ned's like, "Well, you can collect specimens." And he's like, "I would like to collect specimens." And so they go ask Nemo. Conseil says, "Can I go collect specimens?" And he's like, "Well, do you think you can?" And he's like, "I've been the apprentice for 3 years. How dare you?" And Ned says, "Well, and I can row. I'm very strong." And Nemo's like, "Yeah, you want to escape." He's not fooled by Ned at all. And Ned's like, no, me? I like it here. No way. And then he says, "Yeah, you know what? Go ahead. You guys go ahead. Go, but stay on the beach because there's cannibals all over the island." And they're like, "Oh, okay, cool." Yeah. They go over, and as soon as they get on the beach, Conseil says, "I don't see any women hungry for affection."
Yeah, that's like disappointing tone.
"There's no women here hungry for affection." I just can't do Peter Lorre. I wish I could. But Ned starts to walk into the jungle, and Conseil's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "Don't the cannibals." And he's like, "There's no cannibals. He just made that up to scare us." And he's like, "You wanted to escape the whole time. That was your plan." And Ned's like, "Well, yeah." And he's like, "Well, I'm not going without the professor." And he's like, "Well, I thought you'd say that." He's like, "Well, I'll go get the people and have them come secure the ship." So he thinks he's off scot-free or whatever. But then it says there's a nice pan down from the top of the trees while Ned's walking along in the jungle. But he stops to drink at this lake. And as he looks up, he sees all these branches and sticks with skulls on the top, human skulls on the top of them. And he's like, uh-oh. Yep. And then all of a sudden he starts hearing these drums. And he's like, and he starts going back to the beach. And then you also see cross-cutting to Conseil. He's getting on a boat. He's starting to row away.
He's going.
And then all of a sudden you see Ned running out of the jungle. And you see all these men coming out with their spears and chasing him, and he's on the beach like, wait, because Conseil's now in the water rowing away, and luckily he sees Ned and he comes back, and Ned gets into the boat, and they said part when he gets in the boat he starts to row and he falls over.
Oh yes. They
said that was unscripted because the boat had been previously they had been weighing the boat down with sandbags. When they took the boat to the island, they had forgotten to put the sandbags back in, so he got down, he expected it to, and he just fell over. They just left that in because they thought it looked really funny.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's great. I feel with Ned running from the cannibals is like a futuristic Disney when they had Jack Sparrow running from the cannibals. Yeah. I feel like they kind of took that from maybe 20,000 Leagues and kind of tied it in there.
He's running in this.
Yeah.
You can't see us, but yeah. Anyhow, it's not over yet. The men from the island are getting in their own boats and they're chasing them across the water. And they get onto the Nautilus. They run down. They tell the captain, "Oh, these people are coming to attack us." And the captain's pretty much like, "Yeah, well, what do you expect?" Yeah. He's totally unconcerned about this.
I warned you about these.
He's like, "I told you not to do that." And then they come up. He's like, "Maybe you should close the hatch." And the captain's like, "I'm the captain. I'll give the orders." And all all these men are looking down in the hatch, trying to come in. And finally, the captain pulls this lever and they all start getting electrocuted. Their feet start getting electrocuted and they run away and they go back to their boats. But then Nemo's really angry about Ned. He's like, "You tried to escape. I told you not to." And he says, "Go lock him up." And they lock him up in this place. But then they see a warship coming and they're stuck on the reef. And the warship starts firing at them. And it does actually get them free of the reef, but it also shoots a hole in the Nautilus. And then he says, "You better go shut those watertight doors." And when he does, it traps Ned in this area that all the water is coming in. And it also traps the professor and Conseil.
Yeah.
And then they lose power and the ship starts sinking down, and drifting to the bottom of the sea. Yeah. And then Ned manages to get out of this little watery place. It's all the way up to his neck, but he manages to get out. And the professor says, "Hey, we're going too deep. They're starting to asphyxiate or whatever. They're cough." But the captain manages to fix the ship. The captain has to do freaking everything.
He does.
It's basically, he's like, "Okay, I'll fix the ship. All you men, you just stand around, do nothing." He's fixing the ship. And then after they finally get the ship going, the captain comes back up to the professor and Conseil, and he says, "We are now deeper than any man has ever been before." Of course, the professor's like, "Oh, cool." But then all of a sudden, this giant squid comes up, and they're like, "Oh no, a giant squid!" And then it attaches itself to the ship. So they do the shocking thing. It shocks the squid and it lets go. But then you see the element thing to turn on the electrocutor. It has burnt up. So that doesn't work now. So the squid just comes back. Obviously, it hasn't learned its lesson about the shock. No. It just comes right back immediately and attaches onto the ship again. And the captain's like, "We're going to have to go out and fight."
Grab your spear.
Yeah, mano a mano. What is that term?
Yeah. Well, I'm just referring to,
He doesn't say that, but that's the term I think of. And this is a very dramatic music now with the squid sequence. And the men are going out to fight the squid, but of course they're useless. And the captain has to go do everything. Yeah. So he gets out and he's trying to fight the squid. He's trying to shoot him with a harpoon. And meanwhile, Ned's trying to kick open that door. There's glass at the top of the door. He's trying to kick out the glass. So it's kind of cross-cutting between the captain fighting the squid and Ned trying to get out of this door. And it's all very dramatic. So Nemo does harpoon it, but it doesn't kill the squid. And he gets Nemo in its tentacles. And it's all wrapped around him. And these guys are trying to chop tentacles and free him. And of course, they're useless at that too, because apparently only the captain can do something. And he doesn't have an axe. But meanwhile, Ned finally breaks the window and he gets out. And he winds up, what's going on? Oh, here's all this commotion. He goes up to see what's going on. And the squid is sort of dragging Nemo into the water. This is very dramatic. And actually, it's also happening, by the way, during another one of these storms. Yeah. But it's actually really well done because it doesn't look fake. And they did say that they had to put the storm in because when they tried to do it in the clear, you could see the wires and the mechanism from the squid. But when they did it in the storm, you couldn't see that. And you can't.
Go and watch it. You can't see any wires or anything in the storm. I mean, the storm is really well done. You feel like you're battling in there. And I can't imagine if that was, let's just say, daylight or evening. Yeah. They wouldn't have felt the same intensity. No, it wouldn't either.
Yeah, the storm does help add to the ambiance. Yes. And the tentacle wrapped around him and him flying all around like in the air, that looks very realistic.
Yes, you don't see that. Yeah.
You know, and so Ned winds up coming up to see what's going on. He sees this whole squid is happening. He starts trying to help. And we all know he's the excellent mean harpooner. Guy, So he takes the harpoon and he gets him. He gets the squid. But unfortunately, the tentacles are still around Captain Nemo. So when the squid starts to sink down, it's taking Captain Nemo with it. So Ned jumps into the water, cuts Captain Nemo free, and swims back with him to the ship. He rescues him. And then when you go to a shot of them on the bridge or wherever, and the captain's asking Ned, "Why did you save my life?" And Ned's like, "I don't know. I made a mistake and now I'm going to get drunk." He's really angry that he saved the captain. So then the next scene this is a cute scene. He's playing the guitar and singing with Esmeralda. And then Conseil comes in and talking to him. And then he starts flipping out and screaming about how he doesn't want the captain's gratitude. Yeah. And Conseil runs away real fast. Then the professor comes upon Nemo. He asks him, "You took my journal. Why did you take my journal?" And Nemo said he wanted to read the account of the squid battle and the rescue. And then he's talking about the world outside being imperfect, under the sea is perfect. This is a theme he talks about a lot. And then the professor says, "Would you consider sharing info about the Nautilus?" And he says he thought about doing that. That's why he sort of brought the professor on. He wanted to maybe use him as an emissary, but he wants the slave camps abolished. And the professor says, "Oh, that can be done." And I'm thinking, how is the professor, what kind of power does the professor have here? I mean, is he the president of the world? I'm not understanding. Or was he just saying this to humor?
Probably, yeah.
So Nemo says he wants the professor to see Volcano. That's where they're going. But then the first mate says, hey, there's warships. We're at the island, but there's warships all around it. And then Nemo says, we've been ambushed. This is what your people, did you want me to get this, see what they're doing?
Yeah.
And the island is surrounded by warships, and the men are actually going on the island. They're crossing to the other side, and Nemo has to go destroy his factory, whatever that may be, before they find out how he made the sub.
I don't get to see anything, and
Yeah.
it crushes me because you get that far, and it's like, oh, especially the first time when I was little and I saw, I was like, oh, we're gonna see. I always want to see what's
the factory,
in things.
yeah.
I want to see. Then they're like, no, we're not gonna show in there.
And Ned, he thinks the warships came because they found the bottles. Which did they? I guess maybe. It doesn't really tell.
Yeah. I guess that's the idea. Is like they
found them, and then they came to the volcano, whatever the name of it.
Yeah, they followed the breadcrumb trail that led them, which is still crazy that after all that they still were able to track them through the storm, and then but
So probably going to stop there because we don't want to do complete spoilers on it, and the ending is still obscure if you haven't read the book.
Yeah, I've never read the book.
Yeah, I don't even know if the book is the same.
But it's a fun story. I think during that time period, I don't know, like it was the 1800s, I guess.
Yeah.
Is like there's so much to explore out there.
Yeah.
And it's touched upon you don't know what is out there in the oceans, you don't know a volcano, and I think that's always, now everything's found maybe, but I think that's an exciting part of the movie is there's so much out there to explore.
Yeah, I think it's what makes the novel interesting and great is a lot of this came out of the mind of Jules Verne. It's not like these things were all set up. I mean, I think there were some rudimentary subs and stuff like that, but it's not like he invented the sub. But
correct.
I mean, the stuff that he sort of put together here, that kind of came out of his mind. And it's so interesting and kind of prophetic to what actually wound up happening, having these subs and being able to do stuff with the subs and things like that. So it's a really cool, interesting concept. It's a very interesting movie. It's very entertaining, very well done. Like I said, this could almost look like a modern movie. This does not look like 1954.
No, definitely had their time on everything.
Beautifully done. And is this his first live action film?
Yes, it was his first, I guess, fully live actually, because he did some TV programs and stuff like that. But this was his longest feature length. And as you said it early on about the $9 million to spend, and it's quite the feat for them to put all that out there. I actually found this at a thrift store, and this is actually original print from a Life magazine. You would open it up.
Yeah. I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So the original Life magazine.
Unfortunately, our listeners can't see it, but it's this lovely big poster, I guess. It looks like the original poster of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's very cool. A miracle of screen entertainment.
Yes, absolutely.
So, do you have any final thoughts before we do our rankings?
Yeah, just go and definitely check it out. And if you can find a DVD, I can't go to Blockbuster Family Video anymore, but library. And they have all those special features if you're really into Walt Disney and how they create stuff. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, this is probably not something you can see anywhere but on Disney Plus, because Disney's pretty much a monopoly about their movies. But like you said, always you can get them at the library. Certainly there are many copies at the library, because that's how I got my copy, and there were tons. So you can get from your library system rankings 1 to 5. What do you give 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
I'll say a 4 for me.
A 4.
Yeah, I can never give anybody a perfect rating because no one's perfect. But for me, especially being younger and wanting to get in the film and seeing this, 4 for me.
Yeah, I have given a perfect 5, but I will not give it here. There's very select movies that I think are a perfect 5, but this one is very good. I also will give it a 4. It's a nice ranking for me. I like this movie. I think all around it's good. I think the cinematography is good because of the use of the Cinemascope, being one of the first to use the Cinemascope, the widescreen. The color is very nice. The Technicolor, I guess it was done in Technicolor. Obviously, it would be nice to have a little more camera movement, but you got to do what you got to do. The editing really made up for it. I thought the editing was phenomenal in this film. I thought the acting was very good. Paul Lucas I didn't think this was maybe the best role for him. I thought Kirk Douglas was a little hammy in the role. Maybe that's what the role called for, but he was a little over the top. But James Mason is phenomenal. Peter Lorre is very good as well. And I like the music. Carries it. Almost. And of course, the effects, the special effects. all the art direction, the set direction, the production design, all that stuff is very, very, very well done. Like I said, you could almost think it was a modern movie. It's excellent.
Absolutely. I think it's the pre-days, the like ILM and all them for cranes, like how they built all that and the models and everything. I think everything built upon 20,000 Leagues Under Sea and what we see today.
Yeah, it's just like with the models, surprises me that this looks so realistic because they do a very similar thing with models and ships in The Bedford Incident, which is a film we talked about, and it looks so fake. And that's in the 60s.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure it's a lot lower budget. So, you can't really compare perhaps. But, and also I should say that I thought the screenplay was very good. I thought there's a lot of really great dialogue in there, especially the dialogue they give James Mason. They give him a lot of depth. There's a lot of depth in his dialogue. Yes. And he really has the meaty role, I think, in this film.
With like you said, with the emotions he can portray with his face, and then obviously his dialogue or monologues throughout some of those scenes. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of meaning behind what he says, and it's very impressive. So 4, and I guess that's all we have for today.
Yeah,
but
great.
Like I said, if you get your chance, go out and see Hive. Where can they follow you on social media?
You can follow me at my Instagram. It's Ryan Rust DP. Or if you want to check out Hive, this HiveFilmProject.com. And we should be screening soon at the Pittsburgh Botanic Garden in Oakdale coming up in June. So just follow us on the website, follow me on Instagram. But thank you so much, Wendy, for having me on the podcast. Love it. Love talking movies. So really appreciate it.
Yeah. Maybe you'll come back again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So for Silver Screen Time Machine, Wendy's Classic Film Review, this is Wendy saying goodbye. Thank you for listening to our podcast today. Please don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. And please leave us a comment or a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Intro and outro music composed by Heidi Engel. Artwork by Tyler Birch. Produced and edited by Wendy Wittick. Recorded at PCTV Studios, Pittsburgh, PA. See you next time.